Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world right now. Welcome to the internet where time is meaningless. You're listening to Recruiting EQ, episode number 78. As usual, I'm incredible about the episode number. Yeah, exactly. 78. That sounds like a lot of podcasts. Today we have a featured guest, Josh White of Intaso. Josh, thank you for being here.
Of course, I would have rather been on like the 100th one or like the 1000th.
Andy, you're the first person to ask that. You can come back.
Josh,
I'm out.
You're totally right. We should have had you on for 100 and thrown a big bash. But at the same time, for anyone who listens to this regularly, you are the first person on where we have official theme music. So there you go. You can be here.
It's a win.
To celebrate. Put that under the W column for win. And our topic today, aside from also just Intaso, naturally, but is cybersecurity in recruitment, which I'm super excited to dig into for multiple reasons. Before we do that, just a quick side note. We are live streaming to multiple different platforms right now. So if you are watching this on LinkedIn or joining on Facebook or YouTube or X, feel free to send in your comments, questions. We do get a fair bit of participation on this program, which is lovely. We will take lulls in the conversation to just I'll read out the comments and questions that you may have for Josh or Jenny or in general. Just understand that we are not on those platforms, right? We're somewhere else. So the sidebar conversations are not really a possibility. This is apparently a thing that people attempt. And we will not name you, just in the interest of not getting you in trouble, because you're probably supposed to be working. So there's that. Okay, disclaimer done. Shall we begin by perhaps going around the room and explaining a bit about who we are and what we do? Kick it off, Josh.
Yeah, I am Josh White. I look after North America for Intaso. Intaso being a specialist cybersecurity recruitment business with offices in London and here in Chicago, part of the JSS group. I am not a native Midwesterner. I moved to Chicago 6 years ago. And now I can pretty fluently talk all things Chicago, from the Bears to Italian beef, to cross streets, which was one of the most challenging things about moving to the US. Is it's like someone would be like, I want to meet you at Grand and LaSalle, and you're like,
great.
What?
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Where's that? Yeah. Sweet. Thank you, Josh. Jenny?
So I have actually also been to Chicago a number of years ago, and unfortunately didn't need to meet different people at cross street. So I think that would have been away with that. So I look after. I'm one of the co-founders of Raymond George Consultancy, alongside Julie Robinson, who is based in North America, and I am based in Brighton, in sunny Sussex, in the UK. So that's me.
Awesome. And as usual, I am Rick Coluccio. I am the SVP of Business Development for Raymond George Consultancy and also the host of this program every Wednesday. Please come here every Wednesday at noon EST. Commercial done. Josh, I think there's a range of topics that we would love to cover with you, and we'll probably have to cut ourselves off at one because of lack of time. But before we cover cybersecurity, I think it'd be interesting to even just get a sense of your story a little bit in recruitment, or just in general, like coming from the UK to the US. There's a whole lot there to unpack, I would say.
Yeah. I can start with how I got into recruitment, and I'll keep it concise. I didn't go to university, so dropped out of school at a point that most parents would be ashamed of. I did all sorts of sort of retail jobs. I sold suitcases, I sold furniture, and all I wanted was to not work weekends anymore. That was like my number one goal, was like, I am sick of working Saturdays and Sundays. Get me a job in telesales. That was all. And I was applying for all these different roles, and took a couple of years, I've got to say. And I remember I went to meet a rec to rec in Godalming in Surrey, And I, turned up suited and booted, had an amazing conversation. And he was like, look, I think you're brilliant. And I was like, great, but when can I get started? And he was like, oh, no, I want to take you to my clients. And I was so confused. So I got to know the world of rec to rec before I got to know, actually working for a recruitment business. I met a company called Stanton House. I was there for sort of 7.5 years. Sort of started right from the sort of bottom, did a couple of different markets with them. And in 2019, I was offered the opportunity to move to the US. They were opening their first office in the US, which was in Chicago. And I came out here sort of 6 months before the world went into lockdown, which was an interesting time to building a recruitment business and having just moved your whole life to almost the other side of the world.
Had you been to Chicago before, Josh, when you moved out?
I had never even been to the US when I moved to Chicago.
Wow. Okay.
And so bold choice to be like, sign me up. Let's do this. Of course, not knowing the world was about to shut down completely several months later.
Yeah.
I was just at a point in my career where I thought, I didn't really know what the opportunity was. I knew very little. I knew nothing about the US. I've not been to the US, but I thought, you know what, this feels like a really good opportunity to be part of building something. And I've always felt like when you're building something, that's when the best possible career opportunities come, right? The best career development, the best opportunities is when it's not when you join something that is a perfectly operating, humming machine. It's when you're part of building said machine is where the best experience comes from. So yeah, I was sort of threw myself at it. I was early 20s at the time, and was very keen on what a life might look like for an Englishman in Chicago.
I feel like it's like there's something about the early 20s where people are either massively risk averse because they're afraid of failure, because they're they want to learn things and they don't maybe have the confidence. But I also think there's maybe sort of like a lunatic fearlessness too sometimes with the 20s, where you're just kind of like, bring it on, man. Let's just take over the whole world. First Chicago, then the world. Kind of was that more the feeling for you? Or?
Yeah, my wife would definitely confirm that I'm probably the lunatic of sort. Yeah, I always, I'd say like generally I'm quite fairly assured. I joked once that I was sort of full of myself, and I said, I'm full of myself in a good way. Like it's because I sort of back myself, and I think experiences like moving yourself to a new place, and even launching Intaso, a year ago, like it wasn't, none of these things were things I was ready for necessarily, but you get ready for them in the process of doing them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Are you a deep dish pizza fan now then, since you live in Chicago?
You know what? In the winter, absolutely. I would say, if I'm sat at home, it's definitely going to be Pequods or Luminaltis. I don't rate Giordano's. I'm sorry for any Giordano's fans out there, but it's not for me. But yeah, like the thought of eating deep dish in the summer makes me feel quite ill.
Totally, because Chicago, much like Toronto, like we were discussing before, right? Cold winters, hot summers, though, right? So you don't want to be sweating, eating a deep dish pizza in the heat.
No. When I was moving to Chicago, everyone spent so much time warning me about the winter. And honestly, like, I don't think it's that bad. I don't know what people really complain about. My father-in-law tells me I've never seen a bad one, but we'll see. I can check back with you on that, maybe on the 200th episode.
Mark it in the
summer. Pizza at the same time, Josh.
Yeah, but the summer, unbelievably humid. I couldn't believe it. I was like, no one warned me for this.
Yeah, for sure. The deep dish pizza. Are you a Chicago Blackhawks fan? Because I'm a hockey fan, so.
Honestly, I want to love hockey so much more than I love hockey. I go there and I can't follow the damn puck. It moves so fast. I have so much respect for the people that do the sport, because I can't ice skate for one. So the thought of ice skating and chasing this thing that's going about 200 miles an hour is probably my worst nightmare.
and beating the crap out of people as well. Yes, it's part of it.
Yeah, I'm not a violent man.
That's fair. That's fair. No, you know what? It's just an iconic hockey town, and so I'm a demented Montreal Canadiens fan, as everyone from Montreal is. Fair. Shall we talk a little bit about recruitment then, and or even just recruiting differences, right? Because you were recruiting in the UK first before moving over here, even though is that correct?
Yeah.
How are you feeling about the differences?
You know what? It's really funny. I think I frequently take the bait when people sort of have this sort of perception that the US market is so much easier than the UK, that the fees are so much bigger, but there's so much to navigate, right? It's like, I remember when I first got out here and I was building a market from complete scratch. Like, I literally got here and I didn't have a sort of a run up to it. I know some companies sort of incubate a little bit in the UK and then they get out here when they've already got a few clients. Like, I got out here, I'd never done the market. I knew nothing about it. And, I just, started getting on the phone, started talking to people. And so the really interesting thing for me was I spent the first month thinking, wow, this is easy. I'm going to make so much money out here because people are they're so much nicer. They're so much more willing to talk to you. And what I realized was it's really easy to make friends, to make acquaintances in the US. It's really easy to get someone on the phone, but it's really hard to get commitment, and it's really hard to actually do some meaningful business. And what I've learned over a period of time is that actually the market in the US is a lot more relationship driven than I think people give it credit for. You have to work really hard to get a shot at things. In the UK, it feels like you spend a lot of time sort of knocking on a door, and then once you're there, it's like you don't have to. It's a lot more. People buy from professionals in the UK. Right. I think in the US, people buy from people in a very different way. The other nuance is obviously 2-week notice periods. The perm market feels like something between a sort of interim market in the UK and a perm market in the UK. It sits right in the middle because you're shortlisting faster, you're making stuff happen a lot quicker. I'm in Intaso, experienced that when they're looking at our quarter sometimes and saying, guys, you've still got 100K to find, and I'm like, it's fine. We've got 5 weeks. We've got loads of time.
Yeah, for sure. The relationships thing is true though, right? Like I agree with you that I feel like people undersell that about the US, and Canada is sort of not exactly like the UK for sure, but it's different than the US certainly. In the US, people will talk to you, and they'll talk to you about business, but it is a slow burn. It's a long while before you become an actual trusted vendor and they're willing to give you their business in a consistent way. It's an investment of time for sure.
Absolutely. And talent teams are so much, I don't want to say better because better feels like it's, better feels like it's an insult to talent teams in the UK, but talent teams in the US they have more resources. Right. They are bigger. They are, generally speaking, I would say, of a higher standard in terms of what they deliver. And so you also have to work a lot harder. You can't backdoor stuff in the US. Like in the UK, I remember, you backdoor a deal and HR would look at you at the end and they'd be unhappy about it and they'd give you a slap on the wrist, but they'd sign you up and you'd be like, great. You can't backdoor in the US. Like if you don't have a contract signed, they don't have to pay you a fee.
Yeah, for sure. It's best to not F around and find out, as they can say in the US, because you will possibly not get paid.
You have to work harder to complement talent teams as opposed to in the UK. I think it's sort of fair to say that we're sort of told to, not let them get in our way. I remember being told, they're gatekeepers. Here, you have to work with them. You have to partner them.
I think it might have changed a little bit, actually. I would say in the
Okay.
UK, yeah, I do think that. I think that there's definitely some amazing talent teams that work with. So I think it's shifted slightly in terms of, and I think there's more transparency now as well. Because some of the larger organisations, they really need to have that partnership with a recruitment business, particularly in a specialist market. So it's almost like a bit of a joint venture, isn't it? But it's being clear on where you can add value to that talent team, and recognizing that, and that talent team recognizing where you can add value. If you are the inch wide, mile deep in terms of sector, then absolutely you can do that, and it's less transactional. But I do think that, whether it's HR, I think it's changed. Definitely, it has changed. Yeah.
I think you're seeing some of this too. If you look at big recruitment companies, right? You look at the PLC listed recruitment companies. Most of their results have been down for most of the last 3 years,
Right.
and I think one of the reasons why they're struggling is probably partly because of what you're saying there, Jenny. Like, talent teams are getting bigger. They're not just giving the lion's share out to big PSLs anymore. And that's where specialist niche players like us and others are winning and taking market and outperforming the PLCs.
Well, so in your story, Josh, just to get down to Intaso a little bit, in your story, you began your sales journey, it sounds like, selling suitcases and furniture, and now are not only recruiting with great success, but particularly in cybersecurity, and have been doing so for a few years. Where's the leap there? Like, was this through the rec to rec that you ended up discovering cybersecurity, or how did that come to be?
No. So I started my recruitment career in accounting and finance recruitment, qualified finance in Surrey and Sussex, and then I did a sort of finance transformation for a couple of years. I started doing cyber when I moved to the US. So I've been in this space for 6 years. The guy that set up cybersecurity for Stanton House, who sort of inspired us to do the cybersecurity market in the US when we launched out here, is a guy by the name of Ryan Surrey, who founded Intaso with Jamie Weeks. So those guys have sort of been friends of mine for a long time, and the sort of the stars aligned on me launching the Chicago office for them.
Nice. And do you before we had a question come in, which I'd love to get to in a moment, but how did you feel about getting into cybersecurity? Was that a big transition for you, coming from accounting and finance, or was there a learning curve that was?
It would be massive, really, because it's very different sector, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, so I spent most of the last sort of 6 years I've spent actually recruiting sales and marketing people for cybersecurity startups.
Right, okay.
I've now got, we've got a technical cybersecurity practice too, so I spend quite a lot of time in that area now. But most of my transition was basically working with salespeople that sell cybersecurity software. Understanding that market is a lot. I mean, first of all, it was great because I've got the right personality to work with salespeople. It was like, no offense to any accountants out there, but going from recruiting finance to recruiting, sales was the perfect situation for me.
Yeah.
But you have to really understand the business context. You have to understand the venture capital landscape because it's all startups. You have to understand where they sit in cybersecurity. I remember seeing this map of the cybersecurity industry, and you've got cloud security, you've got identity security, you've got incident response. You've got all these different tools, and it's understanding how they sit in this ecosystem.
I mean, yeah, it's it's a whole world to get to understand, but I suppose the sales and marketing aspect makes sense. To your point, you feel right at home. I guess the sales and marketing, I'm just speaking to you now, but I mean, Yeah, I think that it's a hot button topic for a lot of people for many reasons. We'll sidebar slightly to read this comment that's come in as well,
Yeah.
which will take us a little off topic, but that's fine. How does your guest feel about companies that continuously monitor employees remotely under the guise of cybersecurity? Is that something that touches on your world there, Josh?
Do you know what? Not really. To be honest, like I think large companies have lots of software to keep them secure, and especially if you're working remotely, you're working VPN stuff like that. Like I understand why monitoring devices, or as they would say in cyber, monitoring basically endpoints. Right, your laptop is a risk.
Yeah.
That is the nuts and bolts of it. Is if you are an employee sat 1,000 miles from HQ and you download a dodgy link or click on something you shouldn't click on, like you could seriously land the business in an awful lot of trouble, right? Which could impact shareholders. It could impact everyday people. You read about breaches that impact hospitals. Lives could be lost. You read about breaches that impact people's financial well-being. That is a long way of saying I understand why software sits on devices. If you work for someone who's monitoring your productivity day to day, then that does feel a little bit Big Brother, and I would say ethically, I'm not aligned to that.
Yeah, I feel like that. I think I understand the spirit of the question, and I do find that there's a bit of a complex and convoluted relationship culturally in the U.S. in particular between security and privacy, security and freedom. Like sometimes it's well-meaning and it is just about keeping people secure, but I feel like there's the worry that it's being abused to invade people's privacy to an extent, or whatever.
I've become like very aware. Doing this market. I've become so aware. Like I bought a pair of trainers 2 days ago, and they're like, "What's your email address for the receipt?" And I was like, "Can you just print it?" And they're like, "Oh, email's better." And I was like, "No, print it," because I don't want people to have my information. I'm not on. Besides LinkedIn, I'm not on any social media because I'm ultra cognizant these days of a lot of the cons of that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. You're like, my email is screwyou@takeahike.com, like kind of thing. No, yeah, it does get a little much, right? Because everywhere you go, every app you use, every terms and conditions is just kind of like, we reserve the right to monitor every single thing you do and everything you say to your mom and your wife and every picture of your cat and whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think that the cybersecurity market we were just discussing before, I find the reason why I'm interested in it is partially because of all the things we just said, right? Because it is kind of a divisive thing emotionally out there. It seems like it looms large in a big way in the public and with businesses because of the fear of, we read about these crazy attacks, right? Of ransomware and whatever else, which is genuinely kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
But it does feel that it's a hopeful market from a recruiting standpoint, because where everybody else is worried about AI taking jobs away, it seems like jobs in cyber are bound to go up and new ones are bound to be created. So it's a very positive outlook from a recruiting standpoint, cybersecurity.
Yeah, I think there's two things on this. I think thing one is if you look at the cybersecurity market and you look at like the amount of money lost every year because companies have been breached, and you look at the amount of money spent every year, both of those things are going up. We could say that's good. We could say it's horrendous. Like the reality is the problem is getting bigger, and no matter how much money corporations throw at it, they are not winning. And like that is just the reality of the industry. And maybe at one point, maybe at some point, there is a world where the good guys start catching up with the bad guys, right? And there's a net positive. But like right now, it's sort of like it's not the world doesn't feel like it's winning in that regard. To answer your question about AI, I think the really interesting thing is if you look at the workloads of how much data companies are consuming as they are investing in AI, they are using so much more data.
Yeah.
Also, AI tools have like God power, which most people don't realize. When you use a note taker that automatically updates your CRM, that is an amazing thing for you. But let's think about it from an IT perspective. That note taker has godlike power to update your CRM. It has a direct link. Where is the data being stored? It's not being stored on your servers, it's being stored somewhere else. You've created an issue in your supply chain. And for a lot of large corporations, they're terrified of that. But the more scary thing is you look at the small and medium-sized businesses, they don't know enough about it to be scared of it.
Yeah, that's true. Or like there is this sort of like a, devil kind of thing. Like people will sort of stick to whatever works best for them, even if they're a bit apprehensive.
Yeah.
But to your point, though, I think that that's possibly why the cybersecurity money loss goes up, is because it's so normalized to store all of our data externally, even just personally. Like everything goes to your iCloud. You can't buy the average MacBook, even MacBook Pro, that has tons of storage, because it's assumed you're going to have iCloud, and that's a way of them monetizing your storage. But also, even your personal photos aren't on your device anymore; they're off on someone else's server that you're accessing. Every single thing we do is just, we're an access point for so many other external servers, and that's our private data in our lives. So I think it's just not something that most people think about every day any longer. It's so normalized.
Yeah,
absolutely. In the UK earlier this year, there was probably the most like for lots of people, M&S had a cyber attack, and it transpired that it was human error that caused it. But I think the impact in terms of it made people think, I couldn't order online, I couldn't get my Sparks points, I couldn't, their supply chain in terms of what happened in terms of the shelves and getting the stock in, everything kind of stopped. And the reality of what can happen, does make you think, doesn't it? And then the other thing that I've noticed recently is there's now lots of adverts saying, did you have a data breach with, were you an M&S customer, and let's claim. It's like, wow, like, I don't know, there wasn't a financial loss, but then your data potentially, has been shared. And do you then claim for that financial data sharing part? But then I do give my email to people. I'm just listening to you, Josh, and thinking, going to get that receipt printed next time, rather, because it's easy, isn't it? Every retail store is like, just pop it on, because then you're on their database for them to send you things. And I get it, but actually, you're right, aren't you? Like, it's crazy.
Sometimes, honestly, it like almost gets a bit awkward because they don't expect you to be like, no. I've been buying something, and my wife's like, she's like, I'll just give you my email, because I've been like, I'm not doing it. And the M&S things, I love M&S. M&S is one of those things that I really miss about the UK. But yeah, the M&S thing's really real. Like people don't connect with cybersecurity necessarily until they see it. They see sometimes you work for a company and you get these sort of this sort of training that comes through from IT, and it's like there's these videos and you answer a few questions and people sort of disregard them, but you see the real impact there. I mean, I was talking to a founder of a cybersecurity company recently, and she was telling me, the reason why she set up that business is because she was working in cybersecurity consultancy in incident response, and a hospital got breached and completely shut down. And there were, dozens of lives lost because the life support machine switched off. And she was doing the incident response. So she was unraveling, how did this happen? And it was a known vulnerability. They were shut down because of something they knew about, but chose not to prioritize. And chose is choice is maybe the wrong word, but they didn't prioritize it because they didn't see that it could lead to where it led to.
I think it's the everyday. I think cybersecurity historically has been one of those terms and the phrases that it's like, oh, it's in the financial markets. It's like it's up here. It's like headline. And I think the M&S breach actually made it real. So people are like, oh, okay. That's what it actually means and looks like, because initially, oh, they've had a cyber attack, and then it's like, well, just business as usual. Well, it's not business as usual. Actually, there are changes that need to happen, and you do need to reset your password, and you're not going to buy your favorite product, on the shelves because they can't get it in there. All their ordering points, the click and collect went down. Ordering online. I think it was about the net loss was about 300 million for that period of time. And obviously depends on whether or not people take a group action to say, there was a data breach and, looking for some financial compensation or not. But yeah, I think it just brought it home a little bit as to what it actually means in real life, rather than from this, corporate tower where it's just about your computer and clicking on the wrong thing. It does have an impact, and it will. You've got people that are trying to protect it, like you say, and then you've got people that are trying to hack into it and try and work out ways to get through it. So it's about winning the battle, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And from a recruitment perspective, like it's amazing how many of our customers are very used to working with, sort of generalists. There's a lot of generalist recruiters, especially in the US, shops that do a bit of everything. And they'll be, they almost don't stand a chance sometimes when they come up against us on something. I mean, we don't really take on competitive searches, to be honest, because I think they can be a bit of a waste of time most of the time. But like one of the guys on my team, Matt, he's talking to a customer who have been looking for someone to basically build AI security products, and he's talking to them, and he's like, okay, so you've been looking for it for this long, what's been the challenge? And he gets into the search and he looks at me yesterday and he goes, I know why everyone's struggling with this. They thought they were looking for this, but they're actually looking for this. And being able to technically understand like what people do beyond job titles is so different. Like when I recruited finance, a financial accountant, did what a financial accountant does. Like there wasn't a lot of nuances to it. Within cybersecurity, you really have to understand, well, what is someone's day-to-day going to be? What skill sets do they need to do that? What things would they have built? What things would they have done day-to-day to be successful in this role? There's nowhere to hide with it, because if they hire the wrong person who can't do what they said they were going to do, it's a non-starter straight away.
I think that's a really good point, actually, and it's something that I feel in the conversation, and we talked about this earlier, but a lot of the topics of conversation across the episodes of this podcast have to do with changes in the recruiting industry, the job market in general, but in the recruiting industry post-COVID and particularly post-AI. There's this very alarming conversation that, there are some people who think that lower level, entry level recruiters, phone screening, etc., and even like, some BD and whatever else can be fully taken over by AI. And perhaps if you're in a generalist recruiter who's just resume matching like that and whatever else, maybe that is true, right? And then maybe there is no value. But I agree with you. I think that's the value. I mean, like the value is to be able to say, by the way, I think that you guys have titled this wrong or spec this out wrong, because I think this is what you actually need, because we have perhaps a larger view on what's going on and the internal jargon you're using isn't reflective of what's out there on the market. Like just that simple piece of not just being an order taker, but being able to understand, like you're saying, what the need is and come to have a proper conversation with them is of tremendous value. Think of how much time they had saved if they spoke to Matt first instead of these other recruiters, right? Like just look at the loss for them,
A chief information security officer is probably one of the worst jobs in the world. It's pretty thankless.
Probably,
like they
Josh, I've got some other suggestions that kind of go up there as well, but
you have seen CISOs who work for companies that have been breached, and those companies haven't been breached because the CISO hasn't done their job. They've been breached because maybe the CISO didn't get budget for the critical software that they needed to buy. They've been breached because the company didn't invest in hiring the people that the CISO needed to protect the business. But guess who gets fired? Or we've had instances where CISOs have actually faced legal issues afterwards. Even there's been talk around sort of criminal charges because they are accountable for the data lost and for that. But they don't even sit on the board most of the time. Usually they report. Usually they're not even on the executive leadership team. It's a very thankless job, and their role is all about precision. They can't waste time, and they have to have absolute trust in what they're doing. If they're buying software, they have to have trust that the software that they're buying is genuinely going to give them the return on it that they need.
Is that a problem with CISOs in particular, where, example, even if they've wanted to do everything right, if they were at a company that had a breach that you could look up online, that this company had a breach and that it was in the news, do they have trouble finding a subsequent job as a result? Are they blamed within the industry, or is it just the public view or the corporate view?
I think the industry typically understands,
right,
because the industry knows that, oh, they were probably told, X, Y, Z, right?
Yeah.
I know a CISO, and they wanted to hire a couple of other people. They needed to invest in some software, and the CFO said to them, what's the worst case scenario here? And the worst case scenario was we'll get breached. And the CFO turned around and said, well, we've got cybersecurity insurance.
Oh yeah, that's yeah.
The reality is a lot of most CISOs that you would talk to are under-resourced, under-invested in, and honestly, they're just trying to hold it together. I think there are very few that feel like they're in a position of luxury where they're getting the backing that they need to build a program that genuinely they can be proud of. Most are just, constantly firefighting.
Yeah, I mean, but to your point though, because the very public, like, ransomware attacks and money lost is going up and everything, that may be on the maybe changing, I would imagine.
I think until I mean, in a business, and perhaps a smaller business, the amount of money that's available for different pots of that business, without, almost like it's your appetite to risk, isn't it? Like, what do you, when you go on holiday, do you take travel insurance out when you book the holiday, or do you take it out the day before you go? With your car insurance, do you make sure that you're covered? What is your appetite to risk generally? And in a business, unfortunately, if a business is financially aware, and maybe they're not doing as well as they might want to, if the money isn't there, what do they do? Because I don't know the sort of money that you're talking about, but it's going to be an investment, isn't it? It's going to be a financial investment that probably the majority of businesses won't have that money sitting in a pot somewhere to put it in and just say, okay,
yeah. I mean, it's, if you look at the cybersecurity software that most of our sort of customers on the startup side sell, you're probably saying that the average software deal is worth somewhere between 250 and 500 a year in startup land. So, a company is paying between 250,000 and 500,000 for one tool that might only do one very slim thing. Like, I couldn't tell you the average sort of enterprise spend on security, but I imagine it's a hell of a lot bigger than we think it is.
Yeah, it's gone. That's the thing too, I suppose, right? Is the as you said, the losses have gone up, the spend has gone up a lot, and it must be a little difficult to keep up with that, because what's the cost benefit analysis there to be like, are we targeted? Sure, what happens if it goes bad? But yeah, so the CISO job is rough, because it's like you're walking into that constant battle with, do we want to put more money to the future potential threat? You know what I mean?
Maybe a sideline, but when your guys interview with your clients, is part of their questioning, what is the budget for to spend? Do they ask that? I mean, does it get
Yeah.
down to that sort of granular in terms of understanding what the client has at their disposal to spend for the job that needs to happen, and therefore if it's not where it needs to be, then your candidates perhaps are not, that it needs to be high, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, when we're taking down we get retained on a lot of CISO jobs, and when we're recruiting a CISO role, like the most important things really are what does the cybersecurity program look like now?
Yeah.
Are there any skeletons in the closet that they're going to be honest with us about? Because there will be some that they're not honest about. That's sort of a given. Where do they want the cybersecurity program to go? What do they need it to look like? What are the challenges someone needs to address? And how committed are they to it? CISOs don't want to take jobs where they feel like the company's not committed to it, because they're setting themselves up to fail.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So then in terms of just on the recruiting front in general, I mean, starting up a practice in Chicago in cybersecurity, which again is a hot topic, but obviously, as you pointed out, lots of challenges there, like anything else. What's that been like? Like, what's been sort of the secret to your success in terms of being a differentiator in the market, or just hiring the right people? Like, how have you gone about it? What would you say?
Yeah, I think for I think there's a couple of different angles to this. I think for us, for Intaso as a growing business, what's really important to me is hiring people who really care deeply, right? We need to have people on the team that really care about the outcomes for our customers, because the stakes are really high. There are other areas where you could recruit where the stakes are not as high as they are in this game. So we need people who care. We need people who are extremely credible, who can build trust really effectively. Because our stakeholders will chew you up if you don't know what you're talking about. Is the reality that they are very unforgiving. We're very good at, we've got a lot of domain expertise that we can share with people, but people need to care enough to learn it and use it. I think the reality for us as a business is I always say, like, I want to outperform the market. I find it so boring when someone has a bad year, a bad quarter, and they're like, market conditions. And it's like, you know what, like, you can say that if you are the chief exec of a PLC recruitment company, but when you're one person running a desk, like, there's enough business out there to win. That's my view on it. And if you work hard enough and you build the right relationships, you will win. So for me, it's all about having us building a platform to enable people to achieve elite levels of performance and always outperform the market. And how that translates for our customers is very simple. Like, we work really hard to win. I hate losing. And I take it really hard when we're not delivering at the standard we want to be. And I think our customers really feel that we are always going the extra mile. That I've had roles where I've gone back to search 6 times because it's so difficult what they're looking for. But you know what? We'll do that because they're committed to us and we're committed to them.
There's a couple. I mean, I applaud you for hating losing and pushing through to win. But I think that there's a difference between some people who hate losing, but then just don't know how to push through to win. You know what I mean? That they bash their heads against the wall and just hate losing often, and they lose often anyway. But I think that one of the differentiators that stood out to me about you, Josh, from just even our very first conversation, was the out of the gate focus on using the term that you're looking to build strong and real human relationships above all, which, and here you are doing cybersecurity and obviously adept on, up on what the tools are and so on, where I feel a lot of people are talking about their differentiators being tools. And I feel like we're past that now. I feel like the fact that there are so many tools and AI can do a lot of the grunt work for you. Personally, I was happy to hear you say that, because it aligns well with what we believe at Raymond George when we tell people. And you know what, it just seems like getting to be able to network with people, even if you don't have like you say, a resume matched job, that you're not hiding behind this relationship that is purely transactional, where it's like, you have these qualifications and are open to work, I have this job, or vice versa, you are hiring for this and I have this candidate, and that's the nature of our relationship, and it ends there. I think that kind of recruitment is on the way out a little bit because of AI, and perhaps maybe wasn't that valuable to begin with. It's a hot topic there, but
I agree.
it's refreshing, right, to hear you out of the gate be like, that's the thing that's important that we keep
Yeah. I have a friend who used to recruit truck drivers. Fortunately, he doesn't do that anymore because it sounds like it was awful. But like, if I was him back then, I would be terrified of AI. I'd be like, you know what, AI is probably going to do this, and maybe better than me, to be honest, because you know the pattern and how you won in that industry. I mean, it was very different, right? And obviously, no disrespect to anyone out there recruiting truck drivers, I'm sure you're fabulous at it. But the reality is, like, I don't see that is a market. I think those transactional markets is where, yeah, you know what, like, companies shouldn't be spending money on recruiters to do that. Like, for us, like, we use AI tools to help our people have more time to build more personal relationships, to invest more time with our customers. We invest in AI tools so that our people have more space and more brain capacity to solve problems for our customers. We do it to speed things up for them so that they can, you know, sell more, you know, make more money, win more. Like, that's how we should be looking at it. Looking at it to replace us. Like, I'm not particularly worried right now that I'm going to get replaced by AI.
Yeah. Nor should you be, if again the focus again is on building those relationships outside of just having a job available. You mentioned truck drivers. I had a brief stint during COVID doing some internal work hourly here and there, and it was for a company that did car batteries up here in Canada. They're fairly large, and they could not find truck drivers in the province of Quebec, where I'm from, right? So they needed someone who spoke French. This is partially why I was there, just to make a bit of extra cash during COVID. So, but again, they're like, we can't get any truck drivers to apply, or we can't get them to respond to anything. So I started, you know, trying to reach out to people on Facebook or whatever else, and talk to them also in French and be like, why don't you apply to any of these jobs? Like, you're there, like, what's going on? And just sort of ask, and then ask them to refer me over, and then tell them whatever else. And it's like, you need to get outside of the matrix of interviewing and recruitment in order to discover what's going on when there's a shortage. And AI will not be able to do that. It's not going to be able to speak slang to them in French to gain their trust, to understand why in regional places truck drivers aren't applying. You know, that's just one thing AI can do.
Yeah, you're spot on. Like, I think there is I've seen some, like, very criminal instances of terrible use of AI. I think we all have. Like, I've seen it where, like, someone has sent me, like, a sales email, and I just look at it, and anything that is so obviously AI written just goes straight into my spam. Like, I'm never looking at it ever again. No one gets any respect from me for sending me something that's written by ChatGPT. Like, I say to people all the time, if you want to sell me something, call me. Like, and maybe I'm one of those old school people that still loves that, but, like, I'm not buying something without any sort of, like, personal relationship, or at least someone working damn hard for it. And that's how I feel about, like, our customers. It's like, we work damn hard to deliver value to them, to care about them, to build relationships. And, like, we do it in a really genuine way. And that's why they come back to us.
Yeah, that human to human connection is something that I feel is weirdly at a low point in how people value it. So again, refreshing to talk that way out of the gate, especially when we're talking about cybersecurity recruitment. But frankly, it is even people on other recruitment podcasts. I mean, usually the hot topic is, how are we going to leverage tools? How are we doing a better job of AI? We're a quicker adopter. We're a better adopter. We can do more volume. We can do more testing. There was one guy I listened to talk about how he had an AI software that would get X number of data points and deliver and skill tests and whatever else and deliver this incredibly exhaustive report to the employer to tell the employer that they were basically guaranteed to be successful in the job and whatever else. And I just kept thinking to myself, what if they quit because their boss is a jerk? You've done all this stuff, and it's still a person who might quit. They might be great for the job, but if they don't get along with their hiring manager, they're going to quit, and you will have done all this for nothing.
I met someone from a very well-known recruitment software company a few years ago in London, and they told me the dream about like an AI bot joins your meeting, and it will be there, and it will be there for the brief, and it's going to give you all the prompts so that you know what questions to ask. Like, I don't know the questions to ask. And then you're going to walk away to make a cup of coffee, and you're going to come back, and it will have written the job description, it will have found all the candidates in your database, and it will have messaged them and set up calls with them. Are they doing that yet? No, they're not doing it yet, because it's not there yet. And do you know what? If one day it is there, I don't want it to tell me what questions to ask, because I think I know how to do that. But you know what? If it wants to run a short list for me, great. But it's never going to be able to personally connect with candidates, find out what their drivers are, find out. People don't just take jobs to take a job.
No. And I think that's the misnomer. I think that people are taking the emotional quotient out of the equation, because we have this illusion that professionalism is purely cerebral. But we can all tell, even though we're not saying certain things out loud, whether someone genuinely likes something or genuinely likes someone or doesn't or whatever. We can still tell, even though you're not supposed to on the surface say, you know what, I left my last job because this person's sexist and this person's a pig, and you're not saying that, but we can feel it, because we possess emotions and are not just AI, right? AI would be like just a cerebral consciousness out there picking data points. But honestly, if that's how you're recruiting, then I have news for you. You probably are going to get replaced by AI. And I hate to say this, but maybe good, because I don't think that's what the value is really in the first place.
No, I mean, I just think about it down to personalities. I have customers that, like some people will love and some people won't love. And I'm probably one of those characters too, to be honest. I'm sure some people meet me and think, whoa, there's no way I want to sit in a room with that person for 9-10 hours.
Not a chance.
But there's some people that really buy into it, and I think it's that element of it is really important when you're building something, is getting those. And cybersecurity teams are typically small, they're typically under-resourced. Cybersecurity startups, they're all building something. Like, all of our customers are building something, regardless of who they are. They're either building a product, they're either building something, building a company, they're either building a cybersecurity program. They are building something. And when you are building things, you need that sort of that character fit, and that mission, that alignment to the mission is so important.
For sure. And I mean, a build is built largely on, yes, it's calculated and so on, but it's faith-based to an extent, right? Which is perhaps a dicey word to use professionally. And of course, we're not talking about religion here, but it is faith in the idea of the product or whatever to come. You're not seeing it tangibly. It's not a business that's built. And that, again, is something that is it's a very human thing to have to decipher if the person, or to get them excited about something that doesn't exist yet, is a special quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think about it with Intaso and the people that join us. Like, you probably need to care, not probably, you need to care more than you would working for a much larger corporate recruitment company. Because at a much larger corporate recruitment company, you might be one of 500, you might be one of 1,000. Like, guess what? You can have a day where you probably kick back, right? And all's fine.
Yeah.
Here, we don't have days where we kick back.
No, for sure. But it's like, if you're part of a team and you're really dialed in, that kind of thing can give you energy and not drain you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we are winding to a close. I know that both you guys have meetings after this, because again, we've sandwiched it right smack in the middle of the day conveniently. And Jenny, anything else you'd like to add or ask Josh before we?
No, it's been great. Really enjoyed it. actually. So thank you for joining us.
Of course, anytime.
Yeah, thanks once again.
100th with pizza.
Yeah.
Sorry, wait, where do we have to not get pizza from again? Can we, where's the good place?
Don't
Yeah,
mention
I mean,
it. We're not going to be sponsored by a pizza company.
A Chicago pizza.
that would be great. I don't know whether you could I don't know if they're paying you in pizza though, how good that would be for productivity. You couldn't eat one of those every lunch and then have a productive afternoon. Although I'd be inspired if someone could.
And it would be quite seasonal then as well, wouldn't it? With a deep pan, it would only be the winter months. And what do you do in the summer?
Yeah, that's it. We need a winter sponsor and a summer sponsor, some sort of salad place for the summer. And then...
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, thanks so much, Josh.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you, Jenny, for joining us as well.
No, that's
anyone who's joined us live here, thank you for that in your comments. If you are only catching this at the end or you'd like to see this pre-recorded or listen to it, you can catch Recruiting EQ within a couple of days anywhere you get your podcasts. Hope to see you there as well. And we're live every Wednesday at noon. So thank you once again and have a great one.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.